Hi, I'm S. Kelly, the author of Love from Mecca to Medina, which is the sequel to Love from A to Z. And I'm here to tell you a bit about the book. First, I want to assure you that your guess was right. Love from Mecca to Medina is set in Mecca and Medina, two places that are very special to 2 billion people around the world, Muslims. But did you know that it's also set in Chicago, USA, North America, Doha, Qatar in the Middle East, London, England in Europe, Ottawa, Canada in North America again, by the Red Sea, which is the body of water that divides the Middle East from Africa, and finally in the middle of the Winnie the Pooh forest in East Sussex, England, which is again in Europe. Yes, it's an international novel. Why did I choose to do this? Set a novel in many places around the world. That has to do with my experiences growing up in a world that I felt didn't see me. I felt very much erased from my society, even though my identity was featured in a lot of media texts like movies and news media. It was always in a version of myself that I didn't recognize. I was presented as an oppressed person, an oppressed woman, needing to be saved. It was nothing I identified with, all negative stuff. And I felt this very viscerally growing up, this dismay at seeing myself depicted in these ways. Because I actually felt the opposite. I felt very empowered, ready to engage with my world, and it just felt like the world didn't want my real, authentic self. So that's why I decided to set Love from Mecca to Medina in all these different places. I wanted to take readers on a journey to places which would activate my two characters, Adam and Zainab, to reveal their real selves. It felt stagnant to keep them in spaces that saw them as one-dimensional, like Zainab feels, or in spaces they felt that they could not realize their full selves, like Adam feels in where he is situated when the story starts. By pushing Adam and Zainab to encounter new places and new people and new adventures, things open up inside them that they never discovered. The reader is taken along as we unpack the luggage they carry due to their experiences, and hopefully readers will think about their own journeys thus far in life. Love from Mecca to Medina, like it's the first book in the series, Love from A to Z, is a novel that asks its readers to follow the characters into new, like I mentioned, new, never encountered before circumstances. But it's also a story that asks its readers to engage with big questions. Like, what are your passions? What are you willing to take chances on? And how will you pick yourself up when things take a turn for the worse? I'm so excited for you to explore Love from Mecca to Medina. But I did have one request of you first, which is for true success with this book, it's a must to read the first one. I may be telling you that Love from A to Z was voted to be a Goodreads finalist for Best YA Book of the Year by readers, and that it's been called a must-read by the New York Times and Entertainment Weekly. These might help convince you, but I'd like to believe that it's this fact that I'll share with you that will really sway you to reach for these books. And that fact is that I've gotten hundreds of messages of young readers telling me that, and these are young readers from astonishingly diverse backgrounds, that telling me that this is the first time they deeply connected with characters of either Zainab or Adam. Everyone has one that they feel more connection to, and that it's a book that they reread each year to reignite the feeling of hope that lit their hearts the first time they read the book. I really hope that you get a chance to pick up copies of both Love from A to Z, Love from A to Z, I should say, and Love from Mecca to Medina.
Hi everyone, my name is Loridee De Villa and I am the author of How to Be the Best Third Wheel. A fun fact about myself is that I find myself in situations that I don't usually expect to be in. For example, filming this in an empty lecture hall at 10 p.m. at night. And I have never been in this lecture hall before. Some more fun facts about myself is that I started writing How to Be the Best Third Wheel when I was 14 years old in grade 9. And the story behind this story is that on Valentine's Day, or the day before Valentine's Day of 2017, my single self decided that I would like to write a book about being the best third wheel. Ever since then, it has expanded to a broad range of stories within the story. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I just mean to say that this book has turned into a story much more than being a third wheel. It has become a story about finding yourself, about friendship, first loves, and just growing up. And that's why I love this story so much, because growing up, I had a lot of trouble dealing with my own fears of the future. And I think Lara, who is my main character, is the type of person to have a lot of anxiety about what she's gonna do in the future. And I feel like that's super ironic that I'm saying this, because one of my main character's main problems in the story is that she doesn't know really what her future is going to look like after high school. She doesn't know where she's going to apply for university. She doesn't know anything really. And here I am speaking to you from a lecture hall, which I think is funny. How to Be the Best Third Wheel is more of a coming of age story, I think, than it is a romance. Now, I love writing romance, I love reading romance, but what I love the most about this book is how much my main character grows and how much she finds herself. And I had to do a lot of finding for myself, especially when I was writing this book and when I was editing this book. So I guess that's to say, I hope you like it, and I hope you get to see into the eyes of what it's like to be a teenage girl and not knowing where you're gonna go and who you're going to be. Something else that I really loved about this novel and about writing this novel is the diversity of characters that I've included. Growing up, I was in a city with my friends being multicultural from different backgrounds, and I really wanted to portray that in the book as well. So my main character is Filipino-Canadian, and a lot of her experiences as a Filipino-Canadian are derived from my own. And her friends, they all have their cultural backgrounds, which I took from my own friends' cultural backgrounds, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't think I have too much more to say about myself or my book, except that I hope you give it a chance. I hope when you do read it that you relate to some of the things in the story, that some of the words speak to you, because I know when I was writing it, it took a lot of courage and a lot of looking deep inside myself to produce a story that I thought was emotionally significant to me and hopefully to other people. So yeah, that's it. That's who I am, and that's what my book is about.
Hi, my name is Gigi, and I'm here today to tell you about the Hanmoji Handbook, your guide to the Chinese language through emoji. The Hanmoji Handbook takes something we all know well, emoji, and uses that as a springboard to learn about Chinese writing, or Hanzi. When you bring Hanzi and emoji together, you get Hanmoji. And at the same time, the book guides us to think about the past and future lives of the languages we speak. The book is not a language learning textbook. Instead, it's about the parallels between two writing systems, emoji and Chinese, and what kinds of fun facts and interesting history that emerges when we compare the two. Because of this, the Hanmoji Handbook is 100% beginner-friendly, and does not assume that you know any Chinese. However, you might need to know a bit about emoji. Some parts of the book include mappings between emoji and Chinese written characters, what we call Hanmoji. The history of emoji. The history of written Chinese. Interesting tidbits about Chinese culture. The future of emoji and Chinese. Through reading this book, we hope that kids become more curious about non-English languages, get a basic concept of how technology shapes language, and develop a more playful relationship with the languages around them. Now in the classroom, we imagine that the book can help students broaden their horizons. Example 1. Ask students to make their own Hanmoji. Even if they don't speak Chinese, the world around us is filled with concepts and objects that aren't illustrated in a single emoji. What emoji combination would they use for hope, pterodactyl or economic growth? If they really can't represent it using existent emoji, maybe it's time to invent a new one. Example 2. Much of the book is about where writing systems come from, and where they're going. Ask students to pay attention to how language has changed within their own lifetimes. What words were added to the Merriam-Webster English Dictionary last year? You'll be surprised how many, like on fleek and LOL, came from people on the internet. What words are missing? Example 3. The Hanmoji Handbook focuses on writing systems that are derived from pictures. After having learned about emoji and Chinese, students can begin to explore other similar writing systems, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Mayan glyphs or Mi'kmaq suckerfish script. Now a little bit about the people who made this book. These are my friends, Jason Lee, and Xiao Mina, and Jennifer 8. Lee. They live in Canada and the US. Jason is a designer and illustrator, and Xiao is a culture writer and researcher, and Jennifer is a writer and producer and serves on the Unicode Emoji Subcommittee, where she helps review and approve new emoji. They and their families migrated to North America in different times, and through different parts of Hong Kong, China, Taiwan and the Philippines. Their journeys in learning Chinese are also different. This is why our book offers writing in both traditional and simplified Chinese, and pronunciation guides in Mandarin and Cantonese, something for almost everyone. Okay, time to go. If you want to know more, find our book at www.hanmoji.org, or at a bookstore near you.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Dawkins, and I'm the author of Until We Break, and I'm so excited for you all to read it, and I'm so excited more so to give you the backstory and the context behind the story and behind me. So I was born and raised in Jamaica, and I knew that as I was perfecting my craft and becoming more and more of a writer, that I really wanted my first novel, my debut, my true attempt into long form fiction, to really tackle some themes that were very, very important to me. And so I was writing on Wattpad at the time, and I had done poetry and I had done short stories, but this was a point where I really wanted to extend my abilities and challenge myself. And that's how Until We Break came to me. At my age, while I was 17, 18, 19, I was still growing up myself. And I was dealing a lot with what it meant to be an adolescent, what it meant to break into adolescence and break out of that, what it meant to break away from expectations, what it meant to become your own person, even though you might have never even expected that you could do that in the first place. And that's on that premise is what Until We Break was born on. And at the time, I was really comfortable and satisfied and okay with the idea of not even getting published. I was okay with not getting any true success because I knew that this was a story that I loved and this was a story that I needed to tell. And more so than that, while I was growing up and going through my own period of angst, I was really able to give my characters the resolutions and the conclusions and the things that mattered to me to them. And so in that way, I was able to share a lot with my protagonists. And that's how Until We Break came about. And the story developed and grew, and it is a coming of age YA novel about a young ballet dancer who has worked her entire life to move to New York and become a professional ballerina. And a competition is coming up which will define her entire career. But right before that competition, her best friend passes away. And Naomi has worked too hard, in her words, to let anything come in between her and her dreams. So she buries and tries to push aside her grief, and her sadness and all the feelings that she's experiencing in order to have the career that she's always dreamed of. But of course, that doesn't go super well, and so Naomi suffers from an injury that forces her to stop dancing. Now that Naomi can no longer dance, she has to come to terms with what it means to be herself. Who is she outside of her best friend and the world of ballet? And who does she want to be in those respects as well? And as she's coming to terms with those ideas for the very first time, she's also introduced to Saint. Now, Saint lives on the opposite side of the city, and they live completely separate lives. Saint sees art in a much different way. Saint sees art as something that you don't need accolades or like huge like accomplishments to signify any type of growth or achievement. Saint sees art as something that is changing and growing and something that you can keep personal. Naomi is very different to that. Saint also has an extremely different relationship with his family. And together they learn from each other and they have a very pull and push relationship that leads them to learn lessons that they didn't even know that they needed to learn. And they both are able to grow from all of that. And that's what Until We Break is about. It's about hope, it's about love and loss and trauma and dreams and nightmares. But it is also a story about becoming. And that's my debut novel. Thank you.
Hello, my friends. My name is Natasha Deen, and I am the author of The Signs and Wonders of Tuna, Rashad. And I am coming to you today from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Nehiyaw, the Dene, the Saulteaux, the Nakota Iska, the Nakota Sioux, the Nitsitape, and the Métis peoples. And I'm very excited to be here and to chat with you about my book, and I thank you for taking time to spend the time with me. For those of you who don't know, I was born in Scarborough, Ontario, but when I was 3 weeks old, we moved back home to Georgetown, Guyana. I grew up there, and then I moved back to Calgary. And so I'm a born citizen, but my experience with Canada is an immigrant experience. And one of the things that I sort of had to wrap my head around in terms of culture was the idea of monsters under the bed. And in Guyana, the monsters are never under your bed. They are out in the world and they are coming for you. So as a child, when I would go to bed, I slept with a net over my bed because we had vampire bats. When I was a kid and I wanted to go to play, I remember my grandfather saying to me one day, no, you can't go outside right now. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, the anacondas are in the sugarcane fields. And as a kid, you're like, oh, yes, of course, of course. But one of the other things was how you grow up in Guyanese culture. So when you grow up in Guyanese culture, your elders are there and they teach you certain philosophies. So when I was a kid, one of the philosophies that we were taught was that your ancestors watch over you. So you must always be aware that they are there, they are looking out for you, they are wanting the best for you. And so, if you're going to talk about them, be aware that they can hear you. So mind your words. But also to be aware and look out at the world around you because they are there. They will send you signs. They will send you little omens to let you know that, yes, they are here. Here's their message to you. And of course, in Canadian culture, we don't believe that. That's considered superstitious. But in Guyanese culture, that was how we were brought up, And as an adult, I look back and I wonder about all of these philosophies. Was it that, really what they were doing was finding a very clever way to make you behave, right? Oh, the ancestors are watching, so mind your manners. Was it a pushback against colonialism? You will take us, you will separate us from our children, you will separate us from our families, our mothers, our fathers, our siblings, but you cannot separate us from the love that binds us. So even in death, we will watch over those that we care about. We will protect them, even if we are no longer here in body. And so with Tuna, Tuna was a joy to write because Tuna is a Caribbean girl like me, and it's the summertime, and she's got exactly 2 months to win over her crush before she's got to leave for Georgia. She's living in California. She's got to leave for Georgia for school. at the same time as she's trying to navigate this with the help of the ancestors, she's trying to navigate the grief that is pervading her family. And so her older brother, Robbie, his husband has died suddenly, and he is just drowning in the grief. And in his drowning, he is also sort of pulling everybody down with him. So when Robbie's around, no one can talk about David. No one can have photos up about David. And Tuna is grieving. And so she turns to the ancestors for their help in helping her brother deal with his grief, and in helping him, of course, she's going to also find help for herself. So Tuna Rashad, it is a book that deals with grief, so it deals with fairly heavy topics. However, it is a really funny book, and there's a lot of love and a lot of light and a lot of happiness in the story. Tuna is a JLG selection, and she was also Fold's pick for the September book of the month for YA. So I hope you give Tuna a chance and dive into her pages, and let me know what you think of her story.